Hello, welcome to another video, and today I'm happy to do this video. This wasn't something I was expecting to do anytime soon. I've hit over 100 subscribers on the channel. I'm incredibly happy about this. I did not expect this. I wanted to do a video to thank you guys for your continued support of the channel. You know, I started this from scratch. This was just an idea, honestly, that my wonderful girlfriend told me, like, you should do something with YouTube, and I never thought I could break into it myself. So I've had a lot of fun in the last 6, 7, 8 months since I started this channel doing this stuff and having a lot of fun. I've learned a lot of things. I've learned that video editing is a new hobby of mine that I actually really enjoy. And through this, you know, when I hit 50 subscribers, I did a bookshelf tour. I did a tour of one of my bookshelves because, again, I told you guys, my collection's not really as big as everybody else's. You know, I can show you some cool stuff, but I kind of want to save some of it, you know, leave a little bit of mystery and do something when I get to a bigger, higher number. Today, I thought it would be fun. I had said I wanted to do this video for a while. I actually had this video recorded earlier in the lifespan of the channel, and then when that hard drive died, I lost the video. However, it was also at the time when I was using the shitty webcam, and I don't think you guys would have appreciated me going back and editing it for that. So anyways, guys, today's video, to celebrate over 100 subscribers and letting me get my actual channel name, is going to be my top 10 favorite video games of all time. Specifically, I'm calling this the 2017 edition of this. And the reason for that is because maybe going forward, I might swap a game out if something comes along that I think is really that good that it's in my top 10 of all time. And there's been some really great games this year, but it's just too soon for me to say, are these really my favorite of all time? So, and I will point that out when we get to them. But anyways, guys, let's not spend any more time talking about it. We're going to start at number 10. Number 10 is not only the game I bought an Xbox 360 for originally, but it is also something that really heavily got me back into console gaming. As I've told you guys before, during my later years in high school and stuff, I was really into PC gaming, and I kind of left consoles on the side. Like, I still had a GameCube and a PS2, and later on an original Xbox as well, but I was more about PC gaming at the time, playing games like Warcraft 3, Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004, and bigger, you know, PC releases like that and stuff. And it wasn't until the end of that console life cycle when I started to get back into console gaming and stuff, and then the 360 is what really propelled me back into it. And this was the big game that I couldn't wait to play. It's the reason I bought an Xbox 360. It was originally a launch title, and then it was delayed to the following March. And that game is The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Now, I have done a Greatest Generation episode of this game specifically. It was one of the earliest ones I did. I highly recommend you guys go check that video out for more in detailed depth about my stories behind how much I love this game. However, this is my favorite Elder Scrolls game. It is one of my favorite Western RPGs of all time. As you guys can see here, I actually have the collector's edition with the gold coin. I also, because I love this game that much, I have this cool 5th anniversary edition of the game, complete with the steelbook case. This version is the Game of the Year version, but it also comes with a cool bonus DVD of a bunch of different behind-the-scenes making of the game. I love this game. I also own it on PC. I actually own a physical copy of it on PC. I own a lot of copies of Oblivion because I'm crazy when it comes to this game. It is also important to note that if you own an Xbox One X, that is the best way now to play Oblivion. I know some of you out there might be yelling at me, well, PC. Yes, you can do it that way. However, I found that game a lot harder to mod than something like Skyrim. So, and man, they've really done some great improvements to this game on the Xbox One X if you were lucky enough to get one of those machines. So, number 10 on my list is Oblivion. I love this game to death. It got me back into these games. It's the size, the scope, and the scale of it, and it was just a huge game that really jumped me back into console gaming. Number 9 on my list is also going to be an Xbox 360 game. This was a new franchise in this generation, and I'm going to be honest, it was a game. I have not done a Greatest Generation episode of this game yet. I will be doing one at some point. However, it is part of a trilogy. It is a game that I picked up at launch, did not like it first, and let sit for about a year and a half until I went back to it when the second one was announced, and then I fell in love with it. That game is the original Mass Effect. Now, yes, a lot of people in this category like to cheat and they like to say, well, I like the Mass Effect trilogy. And don't get me wrong, I like every game in this trilogy for its own right. For me, the original Mass Effect is just such a timeless classic. When I usually play the trilogy through once a year, and when I play it, I enjoy playing the first one the most. I think between all the role-playing elements the game has that they kind of slowly took out more and more of as these games progressed, and they became a little more casual in that sense. The first one had the best mixture of role-playing elements and action, and that's what I loved about the original game. I think the writing was the best in the first game too. It was your introduction to a lot of these great characters and stuff. So original Mass Effect, it was such a great game. It was one of those first games where your decisions and stuff really mattered too. At least that I can remember. I know some people are going to be saying, well, KOTOR. Yeah, I get it. They made KOTOR before this, but I think this game really, really took off in a way that a lot of people weren't expecting. Number 8 on my list is going to be the game that I will tell you guys got me really into JRPGs. Now, yes, I had played some JRPGs on the NES and the Super NES, and you know, yes, I did play some of the classics. You know, I watched my cousins and some of my friends play through games like Final Fantasy 3 and 2, and you know, I dabbled a little bit in Chrono Trigger and Earthbound, but I never really finished those games as a kid. And also, Super Mario RPG, I think, was the only role-playing game I had really finished at that point. I've always kind of been a Final Fantasy fan, but I never got to the point where I really got into one until the PS1 and Final Fantasy VII. It's important to note with Final Fantasy VII that a lot of people think, oh, that's stereotypical, you're picking Final Fantasy VII because it's such a beloved game. I pick Final Fantasy VII because I love its story, I love its characters, I love the world that it's set in. I think it's incredibly interesting. I think the plot of the game is really, really well done, and the music is incredible, and most importantly, the most important aspect of this game for me is the battle system of the game. I think the combat system is the best of any Final Fantasy game that's ever been released still to this day. I know, again, controversial opinion, but this is my top 10 favorites list. So these are the games that I think are my favorite games of all time. So your list is going to differ from mine. Everybody has their own favorite games, but I love this game to death. This is another one I usually play every couple of years through. I recently played through that PS4 re-release of it. I love this game to death. Highly recommend it. If you don't know really a lot about role-playing games and stuff, highly recommend. You got a PS4, go check out that download for the game. You know, I know a lot of people like to say, well, I love Final Fantasy 9 or I love 10, or my second favorite is always going to be Final Fantasy 8. That's me personally, but Final Fantasy 7 is my favorite of any Final Fantasy. Number 8 on my list, which is weird. You'd think I'd put it at number 7, right? But that's me. Number 7 on my list it's over on my bookshelf, but I didn't grab it before I started recording this video, and that is Metal Gear Solid. You know, I had to pick a Metal Gear Solid because it is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and this was a hard one for me. I like each Metal Gear Solid in its own right. I think each one has specific, you know, great things about it, good things, and flaws. But for me personally, out of every Metal Gear Solid, my favorite is always going to be the first one. I think it struck the right chords at the time it was released. It was a completely different experience for everyone. You know, nobody even expected the shit that happened in Metal Gear Solid to happen. It was a perfect time for video games to start growing up, and Hideo Kojima really nailed it with this game in, what is it, 97, maybe 98? You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I didn't look up this stuff before. This was a game that I remember playing at a friend's house. This was one of the first games I purchased for the machine when I got my original PlayStation. I didn't get one at launch or anything like that, but the day I got it, I bought it with 3 games. 2 of them were Final Fantasy VII and also Metal Gear Solid. The other one is actually on this list as well, and that will be much higher, but Metal Gear Solid, man, like the characters, the story, the cinematography of that game, and that's crazy to say cinematography, but it's true. A lot of that game is cut like a movie. This was a massive leap forward for video games as a whole, and that's why it hits number 7 on my list. And yes, even though I like every Metal Gear Solid game in that franchise, this is my personal favorite. Number 6 on my list is going to be a game that we've already talked about on this channel. I did a live stream of it at one point. I will call it my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. However, I do have one Super Nintendo game on this list that's higher. However, you know, if for argument's sake, you know, I don't like to pick the other one because it's just stereotypical of everyone. So I like to say this is my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time, but there is one that beats it on this top 10 list of all time. So if you want to get technical, I guess it's my second favorite, but for me, it's my first favorite, and that is Zombies Ate My Neighbors for the Super Nintendo. This was a really random game for me as a kid. It basically came to me at a point where I went out with my grandma shopping one day, and this was back when the 64 had either come out or was getting close, and there was just bargain bins at Walmart of old Super Nintendo and Genesis games, and you know, something I'd love to go back in time and scoop all these up, right? But Zombies Ate My Neighbors is just one I picked out of the bin and, you know, showed my grandma. Was like, I want this game, and we got it. And man, what an incredible experience that game is. It's one of the best cooperative experiences of all time in video games. But it's such a horror fans' love letter in terms of just, it takes all these old 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s horror tropes and throws them into one game. Yes, I know the game's called Zombies Ate My Neighbors, but there's a lot more to it than just that. I love this game to death. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It's number 6 on my list. Highly recommend you guys go check it out. And now we're going to get to number 5 on my list. So number 5 on my list, another Xbox 360 game. This is probably my favorite Xbox 360 game of all time. Maybe tied with Oblivion. You know, some days I'll say this one's higher, some days I'll say Oblivion's higher. However, this game I think has, for me personally, the greatest and definitive multiplayer experience on Xbox Live for the Xbox 360. That game, of course, is Halo 3. I utterly adore this game. When it came out, it hit me at the right time. The Halo bug didn't bite me at first like everybody else. It didn't bite me really hard until this game came out. And it was everything. This game, I think, out of every Halo, is the complete and perfect package. You got the excellent campaign that wrapped up the original trilogy. You got multiplayer that I still think to this day is some of the most balanced multiplayer of any competitive shooter online. You also got an incredible Forge mode, which was the first time we ever got that in a Halo. It's a crazy great mode where basically you can build your own maps. You can make variations of maps. I want to say you can build your own maps. I guess you kind of could, but they expanded on it in later Halo games. However, this was the first one that allowed you to do this. And then also it had a theater mode that was really cool. You could, you know, this is before capture cards and stuff like that were really a thing. You could record your matches, and then you could go back and edit these clips and share them on Bungie.net and then share that stuff through that. There's really cool stuff that was way ahead of its time. I spent countless hours in Halo 3's multiplayer. This was a game I played continuously throughout pretty much the 360's lifespan, except for before the game was out. I returned to it all the time. Even though I put in like 300 or 400 hours of Halo Reach multiplayer, I probably put easily 1,000 into Halo 3 over the course of like 6-7 years. I adore this game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It is my favorite Xbox 360 game of all time and my favorite Halo of all time. Alright, number 4 on my list. As I said before, the reason I'm calling this the 2017 edition is because there have been some games that have come out this year that I think in the future could overtake certain games on this list. And specifically, I'm speaking of Zelda Breath of the Wild here. I have to finish that game's story, but I think when it comes down to it, it could be the greatest Zelda game I've ever played. And for me, Zelda Ocarina of Time is my number 4 pick. This was another game I adored as a kid. I had gotten it for my birthday the year that it came out, and I just dived right into this game. And this is one of the few games I played through, at least in that 2-year period, probably 10 times. I enjoy this game to death. I loved every minute of it, everything about it, the music, the graphics, the world that it's set in, the characters. This was the Zelda game that I really connected with. As a kid, I had played a little bit of the NES Zeldas, but didn't really get into those. I did really enjoy A Link to the Past, and that is a close second to favorite Zelda games of all time, but Ocarina of Time is the one that really struck a chord with me, a game that I have the most reverence for in this franchise, although Breath of the Wild could easily overtake it in a couple years. Number 3 on my list is going to be the final PlayStation 1 game on this list, and it should come as no surprise to anyone on this channel that it is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is my favorite Castlevania game of all time. It is my favorite PlayStation 1 game of all time, and it is my favorite of any of the genre that is known as Metroidvania games. You know, a lot of people say that they love Super Metroid. I like that game for what it is, but for me, Castlevania Symphony of the Night beats the shit out of that game, and that's just for me personally. I have played through this game every year since it came out. Sometimes multiple times a year. I just love this game that much, and it was the first one of these that really connected with me. And yes, I've played every Castlevania. I've played through all of the GBA games and the Nintendo DS versions of this, and yes, they're all good in their own right, but this is the one that did it first, and it's everything. I think the music soundtrack in this game is probably my favorite game soundtrack of any game of all time as well. You guys hear me using that soundtrack in the background of a lot of my videos. I mean, hell, my channel's called Marble Gallery for a reason. It's taken from this game. So I love this game to death. It's my favorite PS1 game of all time. I highly recommend, if you've never played a Metroidvania and you're wondering what that style of game is, check out Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Well, the great thing about this is it's really easy to get a copy of this game these days. If you have an Xbox One, you can actually play the Xbox Live Arcade version that was released on the Xbox 360. It is backwards compatible, and I'd argue one of the best ways to play that game. Also, if you have a PlayStation Vita or a PS3 or a PS Vita TV or whatever they call that thing, you can get the PS1 Classic version of this game. I think it's roughly about $10, but it's on sale all the time. And the Vita is actually an incredible way to play this game too. Number 2 on my list, I know I said earlier that there was another Super Nintendo game on my list that was higher than Zombies Ate My Neighbors on this list, but I picked Zombies Ate My Neighbors as my favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. That is, of course, Super Mario World. You guys have probably been wondering why a Mario game hasn't hit my list. I love all the Mario games for their own rights, some more than others, but Mario World is the one that spoke to me the most as a kid. I did grow up, I mean, the first Nintendo game I ever played was the original Super Mario Brothers, but the one that really resonated with me the most was Super Mario World. I've played through that game probably as many times as something like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's one of those few games that I'll re-buy every time it's re-released. You know, I literally own that on the Wii U, the 3DS. I own multiple copies of it on the Super Nintendo original. I owned it on the original Wii. Whenever they come out with a Switch version, I'll buy it again there. I love this game to death. I think it is the perfect platformer in every regard. It's a timeless and classic game. And finally, we've made it to number 1, and obviously you guys already know what this is. It's Resident Evil. So, I mean, what more can I say about Resident Evil? You know, it's a franchise that probably speaks to me more than any other game franchise, maybe with the exception of Castlevania. Specifically here, it's the GameCube version or the 2015 remaster of that version. I'm picking specifically. I did play a lot of the PS1 version, but I mean, come on guys, when you're looking at them today, do you really want to go back to that PS1 version? You can, but there's a much better version to play, but maybe for nostalgic reasons. I mean, this is a series that spoke to me, right? You know, like it's everything about that mansion is spooky and creepy. I love the item management in this series. I love the house, the tank controls, all of that speaks volumes to me. This is a game I play through at least 3 times a year. I have speedrun the game before. I think my record, and I'll throw up the picture of it in this video, is like 2 hours and 22 minutes. It might be a little bit slower. Maybe it's 2 hours and 32 minutes. I don't know. I'll throw the clip of it up in here to show you guys. Like, I'm not joking. I think the world record's like 1 hour and 38 minutes. I'll never beat that, but I love this game, man. Like, I love the characters, the setting. I love every game in the Resident Evil franchise in their own rights for the most part, but for me, it's the first game, the original game, that started it all, and it's my favorite game of all time. So that's my top 10 list of favorite games of all time. I'm going to go ahead and apologize if I kind of look like I got bags under my eyes or I seem a little bit out of it in this video. I just got done working a 40-hour week, and it's the first time I've worked a 40-hour job in a long time, and You know, before that I was doing a lot of part-time work and some other stuff, so I'm incredibly tired right now. So, and that you've also probably noticed that videos are slowing down on the channel, but don't worry, more videos are coming. You know, I will continue to stay relevant. Don't you guys worry about that or anything like that. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys one more time for hitting over 100 subs. And again, you know, that might not seem like a lot to a lot of these big YouTubers and stuff, but for me, starting from scratch, not, you know, baking in ads or anything unless YouTube's throwing them in my videos and I don't even know. You know, not trying to sell you guys on stuff or anything like that. That's not what I'm about. I just want to be a, you know, a cool guy that talks about things that he loves in video games, and I think I've done a good job of that thus far. You know, we're coming up on a little under a year with this channel being live, and 100 subs in, you know, 6-7 months, not really heavily advertising this stuff, I think it's pretty good. So anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for all of your continued support here on the channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.